She thought she'd just missed a train, but in truth, she'd stepped onto a different track of destiny. When Maya, a young black woman rushing to a job interview that could change everything, stopped to help an elderly man who had collapsed on the platform, she never imagined what it would cost her, or how much it would give back. As the train doors closed in front of her, whispers and judgment surrounded her act of kindness. But hours later, when she saw the headline about that train, Maya realized she hadn't missed an opportunity. She'd escaped fate itself. Maya Lewis had always believed that timing was everything. Born and raised in Atlanta, she'd spent years juggling 2 part-time jobs and night classes, dreaming of the day she could finally break free from the cycle of struggle. Her mother used to tell her, "Baby, good things don't come easy, but they come right on time." And today, those words echoed in her head as she rushed through the crowded downtown station, clutching the portfolio that held her future. A final interview for a marketing position at one of the most prestigious firms in the city. The air inside the terminal buzzed with impatience. Commuters pushing past one another, the sharp sound of heels on concrete, train announcements echoing overhead. Maya checked her watch, 9:37 a.m. Her train would leave in 2 minutes. Missing it meant being late for the one opportunity she'd been chasing for months. She weaved through the crowd, breathless, focused only on reaching the platform. But then, something caught her eye. Near one of the benches, an elderly man crumpled to the ground, his briefcase rolling away. People glanced, slowed for a heartbeat, and kept walking, phones in hand, eyes elsewhere. Nobody stopped. Maya froze for a second, torn between urgency and empathy. Every second counted. The next train wouldn't come for nearly an hour. This interview could change everything: her career, her stability, her mother's pride. But as she looked at the frail man lying helpless, her conscience screamed louder than her ambition. She dropped her bag and ran toward him. Kneeling beside him, she called for help, her hands trembling as she checked his pulse and comforted him. Around her, people stared but stayed distant. The train doors closed behind her and the platform emptied. Her chance was gone. Paramedics arrived minutes later. The man, weak and barely conscious, clutched her hand as they lifted him onto a stretcher. His gaze was soft but full of gratitude, a silent thank you that said more than words ever could. When she called the company to explain what had happened, the receptionist's tone was cold. The manager was unavailable. Rescheduling wasn't guaranteed. The weight of disappointment pressed hard on her chest. She stood there, alone on the platform, as time and opportunity slipped away. She sat down on a nearby bench, the adrenaline fading into quiet despair. Her eyes burned and she whispered to herself, maybe doing the right thing just cost too much. Then her phone buzzed. A breaking news alert flashed on her screen. Tragic accident. Southbound train derails. Multiple casualties reported. Maya's heart stopped. The same train. The one she should have been on. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled, eyes filling with tears. Images of twisted metal, smoke, and shattered glass filled her screen. Around her, people gasped as the story spread through the station. She covered her mouth, overwhelmed by a rush of shock, guilt, and disbelief. She'd missed that train, not by minutes, but by mercy. A man nearby murmured, "Guess being late saved someone today." But Maya couldn't speak. Her heart ached for the lives lost, for the families broken, and for the terrifying thought that she might have been among them. Hours later, still shaken, she received a call from an unfamiliar number. It was the nurse from the hospital. The old man had regained consciousness and wanted to see her. "He said you saved him," the nurse explained softly. "His name is Edward Barnes. He wouldn't stop asking for you." Maya hesitated. She didn't know what she could possibly say to him, or if she was ready to relive the morning. But something inside her said she needed to go. When she arrived at the hospital, the scent of antiseptic and the soft hum of machines filled the air. She found Edward's room, 312, and gently stepped inside. He was awake, pale but smiling. "You came," he whispered, his voice weak yet steady. She smiled back, saying it was the least she could do. But Edward shook his head. "No," he said. Not everyone would have stopped. As they spoke, Maya learned he wasn't just another passerby. Edward Barnes was a retired business magnate, the founder of Barnes Coal Industries, the very company where she'd been rushing to interview that morning. The realization left her breathless. He asked about her life, her studies, her ambitions, her mother who raised her alone. And when she mentioned missing her interview at Barnes Coal, he let out a small laugh. "That was my firm," he said. "I started it 50 years ago. These days I just sit on the board." Maya blinked in disbelief. The man whose life she'd saved was the one who had unknowingly shaped her dreams. Fate, it seemed, had rewritten her story in the most impossible way. Edward studied her for a moment, then said something that would stay with her forever. "You didn't miss your train, Maya. You caught the one meant for you." Tears filled her eyes as she realized how true that was. The tragedy she'd avoided, the life she'd saved, the strange twist of destiny. It all connected. Before she left, Edward gently squeezed her hand. "Come back tomorrow," he said softly. "There's something I want to discuss. About your future." The next morning, sunlight filtered through the hospital blinds as Maya walked back into Edward's room. He was sitting up, a faint smile lighting his face. He handed her an envelope, his hands trembling slightly. Inside was a letter typed and signed in his unmistakable handwriting. It was addressed to the Board of Barnes Coal Industries. Maya's eyes widened as she read. It was a formal recommendation. Edward's personal request that she be offered a position within the company's community outreach division. "You see," he said gently, "our company has enough people who chase profit. What we need are people who act from the heart. You didn't just save a life, Maya. You reminded me what leadership truly means." Her lips trembled as she whispered, "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he smiled, "and promise me you'll keep doing what's right, even when no one's watching." Weeks later, Maya walked through the shining glass doors of Barnes Coal Industries, not as an applicant, but as a new team member. Her story spread quietly through the halls, whispered between employees, the young woman who missed her train and saved a stranger's life. Colleagues she'd never met stopped to speak with her, inspired by her kindness. And for the first time in her life, Maya didn't feel like she was chasing something. She felt like she had arrived. Edward, too, seemed changed. The once distant businessman now spent his days mentoring younger employees and attending community events. Whenever people asked what caused his transformation, he'd smile and say, "A young woman reminded me that compassion still matters." Months later, during a company charity gala, Edward took the stage. His voice, though aged, carried power and emotion. He gestured toward Maya in the audience and said, "This is Maya Lewis, the woman who reminded me that humanity still comes before profit." The room erupted in applause. Maya stood, overwhelmed, tears glistening in her eyes. She wasn't just being celebrated for an act of kindness. She was being seen for who she truly was. That night, as she stepped outside into the cool city air, she looked up at the skyline and smiled. The world suddenly felt vast and beautifully unpredictable. Because she finally understood something her mother had always said. Good things don't come easy, but they come right on time. Sometimes missing your train doesn't mean you're falling behind. Sometimes it means you're exactly where destiny needed you to be.